Welcome everybody in WA this evening. It's great that you could join us, and hello from a very chilly Yass in southern New South Wales, where we are enjoying life at the moment, challenged by COVID, of course. So I have taken my mask off for this evening's presentation, though, you'll be pleased to know. But yeah, thanks very much, and particularly for the team, because yeah, it's getting a little bit late here at night as well. So it's great to be able to bring this to you tonight. So a little bit about what we're going to cover this evening. We have got a lot of territory to get around. So we're going to touch on the role of the Integrity Systems Company, a little bit about the importance of the red meat integrity system. Then we'll go through the integrity system programs, which are livestock production assurance and the NLIS. And then we'll get stuck into record keeping tips and tricks as part of the LPA accreditation program. And that will also include how you can upload documents directly to your LPA account. So just before we start, just where and how does Integrity Systems Company fit in the red meat industry here in Australia? So Integrity Systems Company is a subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, which is a service provider to the industry. So MLA and Integrity Systems Company provide industry services. Now, ISC has been around since about the middle of 2017. Now, the organisations in the top row there on the slide on your screen, those organisations are focused on policy and strategy. They're often referred to as your peak industry councils. So they advocate and represent producers to decision makers, and their membership is typically drawn from the state farming organisations. So we've got the groups along the top there. They represent each of the different sectors. So lot feeding, cattle, goats, sheep, and the live export and processing sectors. All of the organisations on the slide there certainly have separate roles, but work together to support and make up the red meat industry in Australia. So a little bit about Meat and Livestock Australia, for those of you that mightn't know, but MLA is responsible for research, development and adoption and marketing activities on behalf of the sheep, cattle and goat sectors here in Australia. We do that by collaborating with the Australian government and the wider red meat industry, and we do that by investing levies that producers pay when they sell livestock. Those funds, those levy funds, are matched by Australian government dollars up to a certain point, and then they're invested under the direction of some of those organisations on the previous slide by MLA in R&D and adoption and marketing activities, and they all contribute to producer profitability, sustainability and global competitiveness. So Integrity Systems Company, on the other hand, we manage and deliver Australia's red meat integrity system. Now, this system underpins consumer confidence in on-farm production of Australian red meat. It ensures that Australian red meat is safe to eat and fully traceable. It consists of on-farm assurance, animal identification and lifetime traceability. And as I said, it underpins the livestock selling system, and it gives confidence to buyers, retailers and consumers. So just to put all of that into context as to why it's so important that we have a red meat integrity system, the Australian red meat industry is now a $28 billion industry. It employs 400,000 people across 80,000 businesses and delivers product to 100 global markets. The red meat integrity system is obviously really important to our $28 billion Australian livestock industry, and it's made up of on-farm assurance through the Livestock Production Assurance Program and identification and traceability through the National Livestock Identification System. Now, the system, the red meat integrity system, supports both domestic and international markets, and because of this, our red meat products are trusted and highly sought after all around the world. Now, there are many producers and many properties that make up the Australian red meat industry, but the integrity system really is about delivering one measure of quality through one integrity system. And we all have a role to play to stand by what we sell and to protect that reputation that we've worked so hard to develop over many years. So just as a quick refresher, because I'm sure there's varying levels of experience and understanding on the webinar this evening, but there are two programs which work together to underpin our industry's food safety and traceability on farm. And those two programs make up that red meat integrity system. The first is Livestock Production Assurance, or LPA, and it's all about on-farm assurance, covering on-farm management of food safety, animal welfare and biosecurity risks. LPA is the tick of assurance for your product from producer through to consumer, and it demonstrates the professionalism of our industry and underpins market access for Australian red meat. The other program is the National Livestock Identification System, or NLIS, and it's all about identification and traceability, and it tracks the location of every animal throughout its life. It's mandatory for producers and endorsed by major producer, feedlot agent, sale yard and processor bodies around Australia, and it's underpinned by state and territory legislation, and that enhances Australia's ability to track livestock during disease and food safety incidents. Now, there's a couple of other elements to the red meat integrity system which are really important. The first of those is the Property Identification Code, or the PIC. Now, a PIC is required for registration with both those other programs, so LPA and NLIS. PICs are managed independently by state and territory departments of agriculture, and their incorporation into LPA and NLIS is the only way that traceability and food safety can really be managed at a national level. There's two other elements to the red meat integrity system which are really important, both of which we'll touch on this evening. The first of those is the LPA National Vendor Deck, and that is what links on-farm assurance and traceability for livestock when they move through or along the value chain. And the third element there, which is really important, is record keeping for both LPA and NLIS, and they underpin food safety and traceability, and of course is very important when it comes to completing your NVD, or should you be asked to complete an audit. So we'll just touch on those two programs in a little bit more detail, but when it comes to being part of livestock production assurance, there's a couple of things that as producers, if you are livestock production assured accredited, that you need to do. You need to keep your online LPA account details up to date. You need to maintain your LPA accreditation. So this means that you need to complete the learning and assessment every 3 years. So the LPA learning is a series of online modules which help ensure that your practices that you have on farm meet the LPA requirements, and to help you prepare for the assessment as part of the accreditation. And then, as I said, producers, you need to renew your accreditation every 3 years to ensure that your knowledge of the program remains current and your accreditation remains up to date. And accreditation with LPA gives you more options for marketing your livestock. And of course, it means you can access LPA national vendor decks for all movement between PICs. You need to manage your livestock and property in line with the 7 LPA on-farm requirements, and they include property risk assessment, safe and responsible animal treatments, stock foods, fodder crops, grain and pasture treatments, preparation for dispatch of livestock, livestock transaction and movements, biosecurity and animal welfare. And we will touch on those in a bit of detail as we go through the webinar this evening. You also, or your clients, if we've got agents and consultants on the call, need to maintain thorough records as evidence of livestock history and on-farm practices, and also be prepared to undergo an audit if requested. So LPA is an audited accreditation program. So as a livestock producer, you agree to complete an audit when asked, and this is what provides that accountability from paddock to plate. So for the National Livestock Identification System, as a producer, you need to keep your online NLIS account details up to date. You need to order and use NLIS tags as identifiers for every animal on your PIC. Now, the required tag types do differ a bit between the states, but every animal must be tagged with an accredited NLIS device and can't be moved to another PIC without one. And that includes to another farm, feedlot, sale yard or processor. You also need to record movements of livestock in the NLIS database. The time frames for those from property to property transfers vary, so it's important that you check what's required with your state, but we might actually get some comments from Beth about that specifically at the end of the webinar. Producers need to regularly check their own records against the database to ensure that transfers have been completed. And this is really important if you're relying on somebody else to make the transfer. You still need to check that that's actually happened. And it's also recommended that you do a PIC reconciliation every year. to ensure that the NLIS database is an accurate record of the devices and the livestock on your property. Producers also need to remember that completing livestock transfers on the database is an auditable requirement of LPA, and auditors will review national vendor decks, ENVDs, and NLIS transfers. Now, when it comes to LPA national vendor decks, we want to be really clear on what producers need to do. First of all, need to maintain LPA accreditation to continue to be able to access LPA NVDs. Now, the National Vendor Deck, or the NVDs, are a legal document. When you tick a box on an LPA NVD or you sign the NVD, that's your declaration, and they need to be backed up by accurate farm records. You need to ensure that your LPA NVDs are clear, complete and correct. Also need to file and store your completed and received NVDs. Check that they have a corresponding NLIS transfer to or from your PIC. And as I said before, NLIS transfers and the related NVDs will be reviewed during LPA audits. Now in WA, specifically, there is a difference between a waybill and an NVD waybill. So just to make a note that NVDs are a legal document due to the waybill component, and that the use of the NVD waybill is governed by your agreement as part of the Livestock Production Assurance Program. And that also includes not reusing them. So you can only use an NVD once. And you certainly can't let others use your NVDs. So NVDs are specific to a PIC. You can't share them, and you need to make sure that you're using them on the right PIC as well. So we've just given a bit of a refresher about the various elements that make up the red meat integrity system. Now we're going to get into some more detail around livestock production assurance in particular, and record keeping, because good records and systems are the foundation of the integrity system.